Radio check. Anybody copy? Hey folks, I'm Alice Cunney-Glenn, and this is episode 2, all about native foods, part 1 on coffee and Quaq. Coffee and Quaq is a weekly podcast I created to celebrate and explore contemporary native life in urban Alaska. This episode 2, we began to scratch the surface on a never-ending topic that everyone loves: Alaska Native foods and the relationship Alaska Native people have with traditional foods. I interviewed Tikaan Galbreath, who is a public relations specialist for Southcentral Foundation and also the co-founder of the Food Mosaic here in Anchorage, and Leila Smith, who is a mother, mobile food truck vendor, and fry bread extraordinaire for Mobile Munchies 907. Although Tikaan and Leila both speak about their experiences with native foods, they cover opposite but equally important ends of the spectrum. Well, maybe not even a spectrum, more like separate tributaries that flow into one common waterway of native foods. Their perspectives are so different that I considered having them on 2 different podcast episodes, but then I thought it might be more interesting and palatable to include both in the same episode. So here we are. Tikaan speaks about his experiences as an Athabascan growing up in Mantasca and how he's learning to apply the tools he's picked up about food health, food sustainability, and his cultural connection to food here in Anchorage. Leila talks about her upbringing in Northwest Alaska and how that upbringing has influenced the delicious food she creates and her burgeoning and successful career in the Alaskan food truck world. Here, Tikaan explains some of the work he's involved with and how it connects to health.
So currently, I am employed by Southcentral Foundation. Okay. I'm a senior public relations specialist, and I'm supporting PR needs for specific divisions.
Okay.
And then on the side, in the food stuff, so I'm one of 4 co-founders of the Anchorage Food Mosaic, and our vision is a healthy food system for all of Alaska, and we were really active probably like 5 years ago. And so we had a feast series, a potluck feast series, where we were partnering with nonprofits and then opening the feast to the community, recognizing food as a catalyst for community, and that, if you prompt these questions and you tie it to traditions, that you can get diverse people with different backgrounds at the same table and talking, and that's really the first step to that healthy community. So we did that, I think 5 different feasts with different themes, and
cool.
Promoted anybody and stories of people who were doing things that supported a healthy food system. Another way in which I've contributed to the food system and the community is the Alaska Plants Food and Medicine Symposium. I attended and presented at the first stakeholder gathering, and then was on the steering committee and helped plan, and a key person in driving it for the last 5 years.
Wow.
Not the most recent year, but...
So what does that do? What does that organization do?
So it was through ANTHC, under the umbrella of ANTHC, through the Health Promotion Disease Prevention Department. And the vision for it was... create a bridge between traditional knowledge and contemporary medicine, and to have a reputable conference symposium that doctors and nurses and medical professionals could attend for continuing medical experience, CMEs. And so get actual credit and have it certified, and hopefully integrate that understanding into their practice a little more clearly. And by doing that, solidifying and representing the base of knowledge and protecting it, and also creating a spiritual place of respite at the same time, because so much of the work with the plants as food and medicine, specific more around the medicine part, that is a spiritual practice, from the harvesting to the application and the consuming. Like, every step should be with intention, and so but the documentation of that and capturing of it in a format while creating a safe space where people can come and feel comfortable in sharing and contributing to that body of knowledge.
Before Tikaan became interested in healthy food systems, he was probably just like you and me.
I grew up in Fairbanks, kind of split between the two, Fairbanks and Mentasta, the village that my family's from. And so growing up, well, we lived on the fringe of Fairbanks, and so I was like really far out, kind of on the hill, and then my dad would take us out of school, and we'd go and be in Mentasta, and he's a dog musher, so we'd spend the semester and all that there.
Cool.
So I was there until I was probably like 21, kind of growing up and doing all that stuff, and I'd always help my grandma and stuff with AFN, or Festival of Native Arts, and WEO, and in the village, we'd just be living the traditional lifestyle dog mushing, pulling water from the lake and counting stars. So I grew up there, and I went to the University of Massachusetts. I used to not care about food at all. I was very typical. Played a lot of video games and ate a lot of junk food. Basically, just anything that was microwavable was my preference. Or like deep fried cheese dipped in ranch, whatever, as unhealthy as possible. But when I went to college, it was at University of Massachusetts Amherst, and they have a big, it's a robust, well-developed food system there. And so I was really inspired by the local community around food. And I became really passionate about it. So on all the streets, there's food stands, there's CSAs, so I learned about community-supported agriculture at that time. Then it was still a model that was being adopted nationally. And really focused on sustainable agriculture and herbalism. And so that was a big lens that I developed while in school.
Tikaan comments on his understanding of traditional food sustainability, how he may be able to apply that to his life in urban Alaska today, and the connection Athabascan people have with the land and the food that it provides.
Yeah, so we moved back in 2011, and with that shared vision, really started to learn again about the Alaska plant. So I grew up with more of a focus on berries and just being told some stories from my grandma and stuff. And so we'd always harvest berries and salmon growing up, but the greens were more of like, not so much.
Right.
I'd be like, oh, there's a puffball. You could eat that if you want. Or, you can eat chickweed. So the pretty basics, but not the in-depth knowledge. And so in returning in 2011, really started focusing on applying that foundation of herbalism, the Western lens of herbalism, and then integrating it into my identity as an Alaska Native male. Yeah, Athabascan, trying to make sense of what it means to live in the city, but still desire to harvest and be on the land and have that connection. It's been a hard balance to actually strike, because I realized in a lot of situations I was going out and had found these places where there was abundance, but I didn't have the relationship with the land enough that I could take from it, but what was I giving back? And how was I helping to cultivate its abundance and ensure its prosperity moving forward? Because there's that relationship between human and plant. And harvesting from the parks or the state land that's around Anchorage, it's like, well, I don't really have that relationship and the ability to get back. And so that started to
reconcile.
Yeah, like how do I address that? And how I have made better peace. I still harvest from the land. Like when I find something, I do it much more sparingly, like really with a lot of ethic. It's like, oh, I'll take 20%, 30%, not 50% or 80%, like some choose to do.
Right.
And then we've converted our backyard into permaculture design and are integrating more and more plants over the years. And so to just have that abundance in our backyard and not have to seek it out, And so in that way, I do have control over my home. I own my home. So I'm able to cultivate the plants themselves for my own consumption and have that direct relationships where I'm developing a more abundant lawn or a forest garden rather than a lawn. For me, in learning about traditional practices, when you had a place, our ancestors would have the relationship with the land so much and so well that they were, like, from what I can tell, constantly cultivating abundance in the space around them. And there was these subtle small things, or these relationships with plants or with animals, and just ways in which, like, encouraged life and their prosperity around them. Because of the change of things and living an urban lifestyle that's not afforded, like, I don't have, you know, a 30-mile square foot radius where I know where the ideal place for something is. So I try to create that in my 6,000 square foot lot.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like this micro ecosystem, but I'm doing my best to find little nooks and crannies and all the little spaces that best support each plant. In the Athabascan culture, you know, I think the term that we're used to hearing is hunter-gatherer, and I think that's true, but I also think it's limiting, because I think a lot of people assume that to be just taking. And just like, oh, I'll just go out on the land and take.
Forage.
Yep. But I really, from the stories that have been shared with me, it was a deeper relationship. Like, you knew where the wormwood patches were, and you made sure to help support, you know, that the cultivation and like a good ecology for them. And
it was more of a relationship.
It was really a lot more it was like passive, but like deeply connected and very active at the same time.
Right.
Looking at long-term patterning rather than these short-term dynamics of like, oh, I'm going to pile a bunch of cow manure onto this one plant so I get a giant head of cabbage. Like, look at me, I'm amazing.
Yeah.
More like, you know, this is the same berry patch that your great-great-great-great-grandma used to come and we pick with our fingers rather than the scoops, because we know it damages the plants and we want them to be healthy and vibrant.
Right.
You know, those types of dynamics and relationships. And like, some of the elders from my village would be able to tell which fish came from which headwater. We're the headwater people there, that's what we're known as. And so, you know, it's the end stream for all these salmon, and they all have these like subtle tiny like curved fin or like, you know, different spotting patterns. And that knowledge is also definitely disappearing just because of less time on the land. Like, all this understanding comes from being there. I'm not there. Like, a lot of my understanding has come from more of a scholarly approach, and then also connecting that to my semi-traditional upbringing.
And does that apply to like hunting too? Are you a hunter as well? Okay.
Yep.
What do you hunt?
Moose.
Yeah.
Caribou too come through there. And I've only really hunted on my land, my traditional land around my village. So I recently became a man. Yeah, I didn't, traditionally, the uncle would teach, and I didn't have that guidance in my life, and so kind of I fell into the foray of hunting based on my own passion, and it took a long time, I think, for spirit to recognize me as ready. You know, and again, it's that relationship.
Right.
And so I think maybe 4 years ago now, that I got my first moose.
Wow.
And
well, congratulations.
Thank you. And I've been hunting for, 4 years prior to that. I'm trying to learn. And in Athabascan tradition, when you get your first moose, it's part of the rites of passage. And you share that moose with those who helped you become a man.
Right.
I definitely disseminated it and shared it and got a little bit for myself, but
just a taste, maybe.
But one thing I want to say on the hunting piece is that I struggle with the more modern approach, I guess. Machines, and I understand it increases access, but it also increases dependency on this bigger system, the economic Western system,
right?
Because you need to buy the fuel to be able to afford the machine or the engine for your boat. You have to have some sort of economic income within the Western model, and so then it takes away from independence and creates dependence.